Jewelry can say many things on your wedding day. As a wedding band, it can say, "This is a forever symbol of our forever love." As a gift to your wedding party, it can say, "Thanks for standing up there with us." Blue Nile can help you find the piece that says it all and says it beautifully, with expert guidance and a wide assortment of jewelry of the highest quality at the best price. Go to BlueNile.com and experience the convenience of shopping Blue Nile, the original online jeweler since 1999. That's BlueNile.com.
Come meet me at the Musial with Alan and Daniel. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. Everyone come gather round, listen to your favorite sound. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. We'll talk the games and all the rest, about the team that we love best. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. We're gonna talk about the Cardinals all night long.
Good morning and welcome into another edition of Meet Me at Musial. I'm your host, Daniel Shoptaw at C70. With me as always, Alan Medlock, a Medlock1 on the Twitters. We're coming to you on Saturday morning. It's probably going to be shifting to Saturdays now for the rest of the year as school gets closer to time. But coming to you at the end of a fairly uneventful week since last we recorded. We had the Cubs series, Alan. And then we had the All-Star game, and then we've had a rainout. And I want to talk about the rainouts and talk about the Cubs series. But you and I were just talking beforehand that you have some grievances with the All-Star game, and I thought I would just let you get those off your chest first before we got into anything else.
I wouldn't say with the All-Star game per se, but I have grown to have an issue with the whole All-Star break. I wish that. Okay, let me ask you this:
Mm-hmm.
What was the highlight of the All-Star break for you?
I don't really know if there was one because I didn't get a chance to watch much of the stuff. From what I could tell, the closeness of the home run derby.
Yep. Well, okay, but you answered the question honestly, because you didn't get a chance to watch the stuff because it's scheduled terribly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have the futures game on Saturday when when all the big league teams are finishing up a strong first half. That gets forgotten about. The draft, I understand. I mean, I like the fact that they're doing the draft in prime time and doing all that, but it has it's another thing that's just in a jam-packed week where everything has now been diluted a little bit. I wish that I know there's no happy medium to it, but the draft needs if they want more focus on the draft, they need to move it away from the week, but make it at a big event.
Mm-hmm.
Do College World Series right afterwards or something like that. The futures game needs its own day, especially when you have Wednesday and Thursday off.
Yeah.
And everything was jam packed, and then there was nothing for those 2 days. And I'm a big fan of the break for the big leaguers as long as you can for the full week.
Mm.
But everything is so watered down now. They don't let it focus on anything. The futures game on Saturday is egregious to me.
Yeah,
because I mean it's hard to even pay attention. It's dumb, especially when you have the potential for 3 off days per se.
Mm.
You can play during the day before the home run derby, but they're not going to take that away. And then you have Wednesday and Thursday, which is nothing, which they would have the spotlight. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
And I didn't really process the fact that they moved it to Saturday because when the futures game started, it was on Sunday afternoon,
Sunday evening, yes,
and an afternoon Sunday game is pretty good because 80, 90, really 100% because I don't think they even have an ESPN game that night. Play early on a Sunday because that's before the All-Star break, so like people get it done, get off. So you had a kind of an open window there to watch it, and I had not even processed the fact they'd moved it to Saturdays, but. I mean, yeah, you're definitely right. We're definitely putting a lot of it, especially when you shift the draft in there. And I don't, honestly, I don't know. I guess there's a lack of attention after the game, but you'd think you could make the draft on the Wednesday even if you wanted to, right? I mean,
Oh,
and not cram it in with everything else, just kind of, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday it. I guess they are trying to make sure the whole draft gets done before, you know, games start going again. But even then, I think, or you could even do I don't know. I don't know. But you're right. I've not been terribly excited about the fact they've moved the draft out of June. And I just don't know that it's making the impact they think it is.
no, it kind of seemed forced. I liked it. Here's the. I'll tell you this. I think there were 8 kids that were there.
Yeah.
Eight
Or maybe.
draftable players that were there. Maybe less than that.
Yeah.
But you're like, well, it's obviously not that big of a deal. Your number one pick isn't there.
Yeah.
Now they're I don't know. It's to me, I mean, I like the focus of the draft. I like that a lot, and it's just like every other sport. And honestly, it's actually I don't know. It's fun to watch, but it's just so watered down when you have everything else. And in a considering everything is an exhibition, I feel like it should have its own night.
Yeah.
And that's the futures game is the one that I feel the worst for, especially as much as we're closing that gap between college, minor leagues to Major League Baseball.
Mm-hmm.
These guys are going to be there quick. I mean, we have 3 first-round picks that are in the big leagues right now.
Yeah.
That you know what I mean?
Yep.
And it's one of those there needs to be more focus on it. The Saturday afternoon is just dumb. I mean, it goes against just about everything you're trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the one that I think gets pushed down the list the furthest. And then the draft, I understand that they're trying to build the interest in that, but cramming it all in as in like, hey, let's just make a full week celebration. Yeah, okay, let's do it, but then let's not brush off Wednesday and Thursday when there's nothing, no sporting events at all. And the Olympic team, which could be in your favor, those teams are picked. I mean, they're traveling now.
Yeah.
So there was nothing. You could have really taken the spotlight on one of those things and really with some with some interesting prospects that are going to be there quicker than now than they have been in any other point in the history of the futures game.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it would make sense to free that up. I would also suggest, while we're talking about things they need to do better, I don't think there's any reason why they shouldn't have the Home Run Derby and the All-Star Game on the MLB TV app, and I know you probably have to pay, just use where the
Yeah.
Fox or whatever, use their feed, ESPN's feed, whatever the case may be. Maybe there's a, payment or whatever that goes back to them for that. But, to be able to, your highlight of your sport, should be on there, and I don't think the future game was on there either that I know of. So
I mean, maybe expectations are low. I don't know. I guess I should set the expectation for myself low on what we think is going to happen here. But TV has got to be rule number 1 right now, right? Of change. It is terrible. They don't broadcast anything through. It's stupid how hard it is to watch the game. And I thought about you when I read this headline this week, and that the Cardinals are down for record low viewership this year because nobody can see them.
Right.
There's no avenues.
No.
I mean, that's just ignorance to me. It's frustrating, honestly.
Yeah, and I know the Cardinals don't want it either, right? I mean, they're definitely, we've talked about it a little bit. They're looking for this Diamond Sports bankruptcy to hopefully fail, and so they can have a free reign, I think, to either do their own thing or join up MLB, trying to come up with some streaming package, which I'm like, guys, you have your MLB TV, just use it. But, to be able to do it without blackouts and stuff, that's huge. Cause yeah, I mean, down here, my dad was watching regularly, and then Optimum, dropped it, in a dispute, much like Comcast has dropped them. And so, nobody can watch them down here pretty much unless you've got the big DirecTV package or something like that.
Yeah.
There's just not a lot being done down here in a gap that, in a place that, has always had a significant Cardinals fans because, back in the history of Camo X and all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, I'm not surprised at all that the Cardinals are having some broadcasting issues. I mean, they still may
Sure.
be ranking fairly high just because everybody else is having some too. But yeah, I mean, until they can get it to where they can, get directly into this, especially some blackout markets, they're going to. And I do think, like I said, I do think this is one of those things that MLB really knows and is really trying to do that. I mean, they're really, really hoping that this diamond thing falls apart. And now who knows how they'll screw it up because that's MLB, but I do think
Yeah.
that they're really, they've gotten to this point where they know blackouts are bad and they're trying to get around that.
Sure. I mean, we all know the problem. I mean, and obviously it's harder to fix than we realize. But it's just, I felt like this past week is just the biggest example of how they just blow their own foot off and can't bring through. I mean, if you're going to grow it. One,
Mhm.
you need to show your highest, your best league at its highest level. Then underneath that, you do the same thing. You go through and you try to focus it and you make a bigger deal of it. But I mean, it just seems like the resources are putting in the wrong places or just lost in the shuffle somewhere. It's funny. Here I'm pretty fortunate. Cox brings it through regularly. I'm on DirecTV and we hardly miss games.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's one of those to where, of course, I'm in Ranger country here, and sometimes we'll get blacked out on some just due to especially when the Mavericks and the Stars and the Thunder and everything is going on here. A lot of times we'll lose a Cardinals game just due to your the Bally Sports being pushed down the list of priority, and sometimes we will lose one of those. But honestly, we get to see quite a bit here. And that's just not the case for everybody. I mean, I have a buddy who's an Indians fan, and he gets blacked out in 6 different markets here.
Yeah.
And that's just absurd to me. It
Yeah.
just makes zero sense. I mean, this the lack of effort or the lack of talk that we hear to grow the game and the effort behind it is baffling sometimes.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about growing the game. What do you think makes more of an impact, the home run derby or the All-Star game itself?
I would say the home run derby now.
Yep.
The what was the number? It was almost 30. I may be wrong on this.
Yeah.
First timers this year in the All Star game,
Something
which I
like
think,
that.
I mean, which is good for the game. I mean,
Sure.
no doubt, but not a lot of memorable names. I mean, it's easy to draw the line of who they picked with those mics pretty quickly.
Yeah.
You got to have Harper with one of them pretty quick. Soto, Judge, those guys.
Yeah.
I say that, but guys like us and I feel like a lot of people watch it. It's an appointment viewing in my house, basically,
Mhm.
the All Star game is, and we love it just because of the pageantry, the stuff that happens, and you're gonna watch it because that's a lot of times that's the most content you see from a certain number of players that are out of market, one of those type of situations, right? The I do feel like I feel like that the home run derby does draw a lot of interest. I mean, I see that with the high school kids too.
Yeah.
Of that's the draw. They'll watch the All Star game because it's on prime time and it's what's happening in baseball. But you get more quotes and messages and stuff like that during the home run derby, just because I feel like moving it away from moving it to the time format was gold to me. And honestly, that's how baseball works sometimes because the ending was fantastic
Yeah.
of this year's, and it was some new names, and that's it's one of those things is Witt's going to be a star, and you wonder how quick you're going to hear the chirping to get him out of Kansas City for that kind of reason as well. It's to where they could focus on it a little bit more. But it was fun. And to answer your question, I think that is the event that people look forward to most during the All-Star break.
I wonder my thinking on whether it grew the game more because I agree that the home run derby probably does, But I also think it's possible because you spend a lot more time with the players there, right? I mean,
Oh,
you've
yeah.
got
Yes,
what,
yes,
8
yes.
players and especially the ones that go long. I mean, you're spending and you're watching them and you're doing for 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever the case may be. All-star game, if you blink, you might miss a guy, right? I mean,
Sure.
nowadays, we grew up with, 2 or 3 at bats and 3 innings from a starter and stuff like that. But nowadays, 3 batters on a pitcher probably, and 1 at bat, maybe 2 out of a guy. You don't really get a chance to, you don't get a chance to talk about everybody probably. I mean, but
Sure.
barely get a chance to know that they're there. Um, and I don't fault that because I do think there's something to, making sure everybody gets in. And you don't necessarily, you're not treating it as a game. Um, but I also think that if you're just looking for people to attach themselves to a player, it's going to happen unless something dramatic happens in the All-Star game.
Yes.
And there have been obviously great moments in actual games that, have stood out, but I think you're more likely to pick up new fans of a player in the All-Star game, or in a home run derby, and that might get like you said, Bobby Witt playing in this, some people that might not have seen him because he's a Royal,
Oh,
and getting a chance to, root for him and all that, do they turn on a Royals game? Maybe, maybe not, but if nothing else, they have at least some sort of connection there and are more willing to give that a thought because, hey, I remember that guy.
oh, yeah. I feel like that's a great point because not only the participants, you see the personality of the teammates,
Yeah.
which I think is fun. And one more step, I feel like the former teammates and guys that they've run around with that are supporters, and obviously they want camera time. We get that. But I feel like that's the most down to earth and on level you'll be, and it was great. I mean, I walked away as a Bobby Witt fan.
Yeah.
Another thing too, I mean, you see Alec Baum. He's the guy that I hate this place. You remember that with
Yeah.
Philadelphia? Well, then he comes on there, and while he's not loud and great, he was overly talkative, but he was great on the broadcast.
Mhm.
It's a lot of fun, and that's something that I hadn't thought about. But yeah, you see the participants, then the teammates, then ex teammates, and just anybody in their circle, and it's I don't know. I've always enjoyed the home run derby.
Mhm.
I'm glad they cut it down to where they have now, just because of the 4 hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, those were
Yeah.
boring back in the day. Now with the time limit and even the way that they compete now, and any change to me seems to usually be beneficial. I like it, but I'm also the dork that enjoys watching and am always amazed by the BP arm that throws.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those dudes are amazing.
Yeah. It was still pretty surprising though that nobody picked Miles Michaelis. So, given the way the game right before
Ouch.
the All-Star game
Yeah.
went, yeah, and okay, so we've talked a lot about that, and you brought it up, and we need to probably go back to it on a Cardinal lens. But the draft did happen this week, and we kind of got cut off last week without talking about it with our technical issues. But you talked about the fact there was only like 8 players there. Fortunately enough for the Cardinals, their guy was not only in the building, but available by the time they went to take him. JJ Wetherholt is the first pick for the Cardinals, and a guy that had been at least somewhat rumored, especially before the season, and even in the last week or two, to be a possible first pick. I mean, first pick overall, falls down to 7th for the Cardinals, and I can't imagine that they had to be ecstatic that was a possibility.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
Jewelry can say many things on your wedding day. As a wedding band, it can say, "This is a forever symbol of our forever love." As a gift to your wedding party, it can say, thanks for standing up there with us. Blue Nile can help you find the piece that says it all and says it beautifully with expert guidance and a wide assortment of jewelry of the highest quality at the best price. Go to BlueNile.com and experience the convenience of shopping Blue Nile, the original online jeweler since 1999. That's BlueNile.com.
Sure, and it was funny. The one of the things that was kind of cool about the draft period is, I have a lot of my really good friends. They're all going to be viewed and watch it and have pretty good context of what's going on. I have noticed though, with guys that are making the jump, your Langfords, your Skeens, your Wilsons now, these guys that are making it within that 1 to 2 year time frame, which used to be just unheard of, is now happening. You hear from them a lot of just the casual fans that call and ask. And what really surprised me is when I was getting some texts from some of the casual guys that had done some of their research and was like, hey, what's going to happen here? And I was like, oh, I'm pretty impressed. I mean, I was like, crap, I just, we'll go over the board. And it was one of those to where we didn't talk about the draft, but due to some technical issues on my side, but I'm kind of wish we would have last week. I would have been completely off base on what I would have said. I really thought they were going to take.
You would have been exactly right, Alan. That's what you're supposed to say. You'd have nailed it. If it wasn't for these technical issues, you'd have had this down.
Yeah, somebody asked me, and the wish list for me was Burns and Smith, and then to see that Wetherholt drops down, and it was funny. A really good friend of mine goes, "That's just not who I want. I'd rather him get Caglione." And I was like, "Man, I don't know." I mean, it was one of those situations where, as an Oklahoma State baseball fan, to see that Wetherholt didn't play in the first series, you're like, okay, good, because that's a series you probably lose. And then he probably turns out to be, even coming off almost a full season injury, one of the better hitters in the Big 12 tournament. You knew he was pretty impressive, and he's not a very big guy.
Right.
I would assume that's probably going to be second base material or whatnot. But yeah, I mean, a guy that was number one on a lot of projected lists just not very long ago. I think that they're pretty happy with what they pulled off.
I think that, and I haven't seen much of it this week, but you're talking about how many draft picks from last year are already in the major leagues. There's going to be a lot of expectation on him to be ready. Maybe by this time next year. I mean, I don't believe that's accurate. I don't think that that's fair, but I think there's still going to be that idea that if he's not in the major leagues by probably even, by 2026, there's going to be some people that wonder, did they get anything out of this? And hopefully that's not the case, but I do wonder how fast of a fast riser do you think he's going to be?
The thing is didn't we have the same conversation with Chase Davis last year though?
Possibly. Yeah.
And well, I say that in as a whole, not you and I.
No, yeah,
I'm
I
just
get you.
saying, and when he didn't start off this year hot, if you remember, there was a lot of backlash on social media about that, and not that that's by any means the barometer we're going with here, but yeah, you're probably right. I mean, you see that. I think we probably need to temper it a little bit, but I think that the gap, and I'm thrilled to say, is definitely closing from where we are in college baseball to where we could possibly be in professional baseball. And they've seemed to move quick. And I mean, I haven't heard, probably he hasn't signed yet, right?
No, not officially yet.
Okay. And which will be interesting to see how that works out, and see, the number on that, and see where he goes, and see what comes with it. I was kind of fired up to see that they drafted a couple of Big 12 players. One of which, he was a horse for Oklahoma State last year, and Brian Holiday doesn't really fit the mold of a big league starter. Not very big, about 5'10" or so, but he was a strikeout machine last year. It was impressive. So I know that doesn't always correlate, but the excitement level for me is, hey, you see him quicker now than ever.
Yeah. I think you're right on Chase Davis. There are people that have already kind of written him off as a bust, even though, he had a real strong June this year, and, July has he hasn't had much sample in July, or at least last I had looked, it hadn't. But, again, we're just a year out. And that's a guy that was drafted, 18th, 17th, somewhere in
Yeah,
there. Um, you know, the drop off, as we all know, it gets, depending on the draft, but by the time you're getting the second half of the first round, you're not getting the same kind of guys that you're getting, in the first top 5, right? So these guys may take a little bit longer. They may have all the tools and talents, but they may not be quite ready to, jump into the major league. So, I don't think we should, completely write off Chase Davis or anything yet, but I
sure.
understand that, you get that, that drumbeat of, especially like you said, social media and other places where, why isn't this guy, at least farther along? And I think there's, there can be some issues there, right? Not that we're saying that Chase Davis should have been in the major leagues, but, should he have been to Double A by now or something like that? Then that's the kind of thing you start wondering too. But I think with Wetherholt, I think it's going to be very interesting to see where they start him and then how aggressive they are moving him. And they don't have to be aggressive, right? Like you said, he's probably going to move to second base, if nothing else, because Mason wins at short right now. But even if they move to second base, then you get the issue with Gorman, right? If he moves quickly. So there's no reason to just, shoot him up there unless he proves that he can do it.
Yeah. I'm curious to see where they start him and how quick he moves through. But it's exciting. I feel like in this situation where you knew that you couldn't miss this one, I feel like they walk away pretty happy with what they have.
Yeah. I think so. It's going to be interesting to see what the whole draft overall is. Not having the second pick, there's some questions about some of the players that they did take. Like you said, they seem to take a lot of short players to start with. There's some people that, I was kind of following along with the regular crew, Kyle and Kareem and all those on Twitter, just kind of seeing what their thoughts were. And it kind of seemed like there was a few diamonds in the rough later on, but overall it was fairly safe draft, maybe a draft where they were trying to save some money for Wetherholt. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how the whole thing plays out. They've started signing a lot of those guys already, and we'll see how it goes. And then I'm sure once they've kind of got everybody locked in and they know what their pool is, that's where they can, finalize with Wetherholt and bring him. And, they don't go back to St. Louis for another week or so. So they probably, that's probably one of those things that usually what happens, right? They sign them and maybe right before the first game of a homestand or something and get them out there and all that
on the
kind of
field.
stuff. So not any concern. I don't remember what's the deadline on signing these guys now. I know you used to have one like July, but I don't like the end of July. But I don't know if that's still the case.
Gosh, I can't imagine. Yeah, I'm not sure. I remember that because that would be the rush to see whether they were going back to college or not.
Right. But that was also when you drafted them at mid-June. So
yes,
I don't know.
Yes.
Kyle's probably screaming at the radio right now. But anyway, it won't matter. They'll get it done. So, so the Cardinals went into the break splitting with the Cubs. They come out of the break with rain. And I don't know, Alan, I'm starting to get 2020 flashbacks with how many doubleheaders the Cardinals have had to play.
Man.
They're playing one today against the Braves. They played one last Saturday against the Cubs. They played the one against the Royals last week. As we talked about earlier, they played a doubleheader against the Braves when the Braves were in St. Louis. And I'm probably missing one or two. It's kind of crazy how much. Even when they haven't rained out, they've had rain delays and things of that nature. The weather really has kind of messed with them some this year.
It's funny how it kind of lines up with what Mo said at the Q&A. I remember his first question was the toughest part of the season was dealing with the weather. And I was like, man, that's tough to say. As a high school coach who has to deal with that when it's cold and on a less than optimal playing surface, I was kind of offended. I was like, hey, for him to say that about a big league ballpark stuff, but he's right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, yeah.
He was right.
Yeah.
It stinks, for the safety of everybody involved. Yeah. So, yeah, it's a little bit crazy. But, yeah, it's always one of those where I look through the competitive lens on that, too, to say very rarely are there those sweeps
Yeah.
I'm real worried about this series this weekend, by the way, because I feel like Atlanta's probably one of those that's hey, we've kind of been treading water
Mhm.
this, and I don't know, I'm a little worried about it anyway. But it's one of those, you very rarely have the doubleheader sweep in the bigs, so you think that, well, you're going to get away with one of them anyway. I was pretty optimistic about last night, but not necessarily about the rest of the series per se.
I think Alan's cat's got him. And you're right. I mean, doubleheader sweeps are tough, but then the Cardinals swept a doubleheader against Cubs, and the Royals swept the doubleheader against them. So it's not impossible, and I think that's very interesting to have to come into this. I mean, we've talked about innings all the time, but we're having to juggle those immediately, right? I mean, with a doubleheader.
Yeah, the so does somebody come up today?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
you know what I mean, and it's
yeah,
one of those that it's tough to. Man, can you imagine just coming out out of the break and having to move all those parts around?
yeah.
That's pretty crazy. I guess you always have your backup list ready to go, but yeah, it's funny how I mean, you better have a couple good starts today, or you're not going to be set up very well against the Pittsburgh team that, on the comeback win last night. It's not going to be necessarily an easy series to go in there and play beginning of next week. So yeah, I'm a little worried about this first week, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it does help that you've got Gibson and Gray going,
Agreed.
and fully rested. You've got everybody in the pen available. So I don't think you have to juggle it like we saw in the Kansas City one, especially, where it was like you've got a doubleheader and you've got limited number of bullpen pieces, and so they
Yeah,
had to let Palante go back out there longer than they probably should have, and stuff like that. Um, so I do think there's at least that is helpful. But you're right, you can't burn them out too much because of coming around. Kyle Leahy was the 27th man. He'll probably be the 27th man again this time, right? I mean, it really does. It feels like it's whatever that guy is that's down there, like Leahy or Roycroft or somebody like that that's bouncing back and forth.
yeah.
You just bring them up real quick and send them back down. But yeah, let's see. I'm just looking at my little roster thing. I can see five times they've been able to do that, not counting they were able to do a 27th man for the Rickwood game. Yeah, so that's five different double headers at least. And and that's not even counting the other times with the rain. But you're right. I mean, it's not ideal to start an important series against the Braves like that. Um, and it's just, I feel like, I mean, everybody, all fans are, we've been without without any game for 2 days and without a Cardinal game for 4 days. And so you have that, that anticipation of, starting off the quote second half, and then
Yeah,
for just to kind of fall flat. It's not the same as opening day and get rained out, but it's got a kind of the same kind of feel to it.
sure. I mean, and then just that Friday without baseball is tough. I mean,
Mhm.
to set the course for the rest of the weekend. Yeah, it's difficult, but yeah, it is strange. Um, these are a bunch. The
Yeah.
more that we talk about it, I was like, well, I don't know how much this is over the course of what we normally see, but it seems like there's been a ton of weather delays this year.
Yeah. Yeah, it has been, and a little bit later, right? We kind of expect it to early on to have rain, and then summertime to be pretty dry, and hadn't been that way, especially over the last couple of weeks. So,
Yeah,
interesting. We'll see how that juggles. And again, you've got a Ryan Helsley who hasn't pitched but 3 times this month. Hasn't pitched in over a week. I mean, you're not pitching even back. Both games have a double header today or anything, but if he throws today, he should be able to throw tomorrow.
I would think
And
so.
he would.
Yeah,
I know that they're trying to, to monitor and adjust and stuff, but it also gets down to the point now, right, that you can't do as much of that. I mean, this is kind of the home stretch. There's 40% of the season left, and then I'm not saying you're playing, have to win every game or anything like that, but it's also getting to the point where there's a little bit more urgency, and you can't. You obviously can't throw them out there, worn out, and you can't throw them 5 days in a row or anything like that. But I think there's got to be more of the back-to-back days and stuff like that, which we have seen them. I'm not really concerned about bullpen usage. I think they've done a fine job. But I think we'll have to you can't really go a week without seeing Ryan Helsley again.
Yeah, that's it was funny. Some of the game, some of it was just dictated by game period. But when you before the show, when we were going over usage wise, I was a little surprised. I was thinking, wow, man, that's not a lot, And then just set out the All-Star game, and we knew it. I mean, I completely understand that, and I second that, just to come back fully healthy. But yeah, you're right. You'd think that, hey, here we are. Let's start pushing it a little bit, and to maybe, I don't know if this was a segue or whatnot, but I would assume he's probably has some help coming too. I mean, that I bet that's probably where the focus is going to be at the deadline.
I figure, and even without that, right? I mean, before we get into maybe any of that talk, there's been the end of the first half is a good time to get some injury updates, and Riley O'Brien is about to start a AAA rehab assignment, and so he'll probably be back in a couple of weeks. Probably right after the trade deadline. That's a guy that we had really high hopes for. Going into the season, has only pitched one inning this year, so hopefully he comes back healthy, and that adds a thing. And then you've got, Steven Matz, who maybe middle of the month. And when he comes back, it really does feel like he's a bullpen piece, right? So,
at this point, yeah.
So even if they don't make a trade for a reliever at the deadline, which is, 11 days away, I think they're going to be able to shore up the bullpen some. Plus, they've got, again, they've got guys like Leahy and others that have rotated up, that if they just need new arms, they can, kind of rotate and stuff, and have been effective. But so I don't know how much they go out and try to get one. They probably do. I wouldn't be too surprised at that either. But it still feels like a starter has got to be maybe back on the top of the list.
Sure. Yeah, that's they'll be dabbling in pitching one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Another veteran starter would be awesome. I think that your Crochet is going to be too high priced,
mm-hmm.
and I've heard that's extremely high priced. But gosh, it'd be nice to go and corner one of those guys and then know that you're going to be in every series big time.
Mm-hmm.
But it would be nice. But yeah, I would assume that they aim from the back, but go to the rotation a little bit.
Yeah. And again,
where do you think? Go ahead.
No.
Go with this.
No, I was just gonna say it's just gonna be interesting to see who is on the market and which teams are actually buying and selling, because it's still kind of gonna up in there.
That's why I think that there's a lot of excitement over the start here of the second half, because there's some teams that are make or break. You got your Rangers, which I don't see them selling, but you have your Rangers. You have several teams. The Blue Jays are going to be really interesting.
Yeah.
And then the White Sox, which that's going to be, they're going to be kind of crazy to watch, because they can move just about everybody.
Yeah. I mean, the Rangers, they played well lately. They're getting people healthy. They're still 7.5 games back in the wild card. And so I don't, about that far. I think maybe it looks like 5 games back in the division, with a Houston team that has taken over the lead there, after being so terrible. So, they're kind of definitely on their way up. I'm not saying they will, but it might not be the worst thing. And now, again, we talked about it last week or week before, how Scherzer had said he's not planning to waive his trade clause. So, but, things happen, right? I mean, if the Rangers come out and lose 5 in a row to start the second half and really take themselves out of it, I think that, maybe he opens that door back up,
Well, and I'm not always sure that there's not an angle to those comments.
Well, that's true too.
You know what I mean? Like I said, you and I both don't think it will happen, but I've always felt like there may be a little bit of gamesmanship when they come out and say that. So
there usually is. I think that Scherzer did point out, hey, he thought they were going to still win here and stuff like that. A lot of times they say, that they're just not waving. It's more about them. They want to stay there, whatever.
Yeah.
And then that somehow gets bought out or whatever the case may be when the
Yeah.
trade happens. But, Scherzer's been around the block. He knows how these things work. And I honestly think he probably expects the Rangers to make a run, and he wants to. I mean, he was there last year, so when they won. So I think that there's probably some expectation there. And they very well may. I think this, like you said, coming out of the break here is a pretty big thing. They lost last night, I guess, but we'll see. It's going to be very interesting to see what kind of rumors start popping up in this week, basically,
Yeah.
right? I mean, by the time we record next Saturday, we'll be just a handful of days from that deadline, and deals in theory could be already happening. And we've seen a few here and there, right? But you could start to, 26th, 27th, you may really start seeing some of those deals start finally finalizing, and things start shifting. Maybe not for the Cardinals, but for baseball overall.
Sure. Yeah. Especially the fact that there's a lot of guys that are going to pique interest with the White Sox. You're going to see what the Blue Jays are going to do, and they're kind of signaling that it could be. I don't know if it's going to be huge, being a Guerrero or Bichette type deal, but they're going to sell off there. Stratton's an interesting name, honestly.
Yeah.
You're going to see a lot of that, but then you also see that the Yankees are in play with a bunch of guys, and they still are kind of that albatross, and they're good. So they're going to be over everything. Here's my question to you: does the Edman injury change your opinion at all about what they'll do offensively?
No. I mean, honestly, no. Edmund had a little bit of a setback. I want to talk about that. Setback in his rehab with his ankle, which is weird because that's I don't know what happened there. He's supposed to start back playing like Tuesday, but that it continues to push him farther and farther back. But no, I don't think so, because I don't think the Cardinals. I mean, one, Tommy Edman is, league average hitter at best, right? When he's healthy, even. I mean, if he'd played all year long, he's going to be, about league average. He's going to give his good days, his bad days, whatever. And now you're getting a guy that hasn't seen major league pitching since, last September, basically. And even then he was hampered, right? I mean, he was hampered kind of down the stretch. It was struggling. So I think that the Cardinals are thinking whatever Tommy Edman gives them is a bonus. But if we want to be sure that we have more offense, we still have to make that kind of trade.
That's kind of how I feel about it. Just because when it kind of surprised me that the line we were looking for right-handed power was a right-handed hitting outfielder was brought up. So I mean, how big are they going to shoot here?
Not much.
I'm dancing around the edges of my next question. Now you can probably imagine what it's going to be.
I mean, I honestly don't think that. I think that's one of those things that if they came out of the deadline without it, they wouldn't be that big a deal. If they went and got their starting pitcher and they're really, I mean, if they could shore up the pitching staff, I think they're like, that's an ideal. That's nice. That would really help, but it's not necessary. I mean, that's my thinking. What do you think?
Well, my next question was going to be, is there any recircling to Luis Robert?
I don't think so, because I don't think.
Go ahead.
Well, I think more than anything,
I'm just wondering, not if heard anything or anything like that, because I do kind of wonder what the Cardinals' true opinion would be of Robert now.
I think they'd be fine with him. I think the opinion is probably still high. I just don't think they have the talent to go get him.
That they're willing to move.
That they're willing. Yeah. I mean, they're trade pieces that they're going to be looking at. And I don't think he's one that they would go, mortgage the future for or anything of that nature.
No, agreed.
So I just don't think they're going to engage much on there because I'm sure they'll check in, see what the price is, realize it's too high, and move on. Especially with you know apparently few people in the market to sell and a lot of buyers. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to be maybe bidding on
Yeah.
Robert, and I don't think the Cardinals are going to get in on that.
Yeah, that's I'm curious to see the bidding more on that, or if he moves at all. I mean, I would think that they would have to, and it's probably going to bring a high price because I think you're through 25 with an option, maybe
Maybe that sounds about
with
right.
him, and then between Robert and Crochet, can you imagine
Yeah,
and a new
yeah,
GM, yeah, and
yeah.
I mean, new guy. I could see really making your mark on it.
Yeah, I agree. That's that's all those reasons. It's like I don't expect anything like that.
Yeah,
And again, I don't know. Like I said, they've talked about it more platooning. I don't know that they want to completely put Siani in a corner, if you will.
agreed.
I
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah,
I think they'd like to have him out there a little bit more than just defensive replacement. Now, that being said, to be able to put him out there in the seventh inning of any game, any game you're winning, to replace whoever's playing center is a nice option. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't. I think there's a reason they were talking about right-handed power instead, or right-handed outfielder instead of we just need a short. We just need a center fielder. I think they're just looking to maybe improve the margins a little bit, and I think that's really kind
yeah,
of what we're looking at, right? I mean, we're not looking at because this team is the second wild card. You're not looking to overhaul the whole thing. You're looking to tweak at the edges, and
agreed. Yeah.
getting
They
it
put themselves in a good position, no doubt about it.
right.
I mean, that's and I just kind of wondered. I'm like, how much there is of hey, that we could greatly improve and move in on Milwaukee, or let's see what we do. And our numbers are pointing to the fact that we're still going to be in this regardless. So yeah, I mean that you're right. And even the marginal improvement this year, I'd be happy with. I mean, yeah, I'm content with
Yeah,
that. I don't know if that's what we're conditioned just because that's usually what we see, or if the fact that hey, let's improve some of the areas that are weak, and you still feel like they're going to be pretty good.
yeah. I don't feel like this team is a team that you fully commit to. Like you go all in. You just like this is the team we have to win with this team. Um, because of the pitching isn't that good, and it's one of those things like, hey, we want to get to October, and who knows what happens there and all that. But I don't think this is the kind of team that you just say, this is our shot. We're gonna,
Yeah,
and so yeah, getting stuff around the edges, helping it out, giving them a better chance to get to October and maybe take the division. That would be great too. I mean, 4.5 is not too, unsurmountable. Um, I think that's the case. But if it's a team that you think, okay, we need one big guy and we're a World Series favorite, then maybe you do that. Then again, they
yeah,
didn't do it in the last years of Albert Pujols and Yadier Molina, and they didn't do it in the
no,
last years of Wainwright,
yeah,
and they've never felt like there's that team that they have to go, kind of mortgage the future to win with, and that's one reason they've been successful, I think, to some degree. But
that's it. Yeah,
it's also been, you know, assuming they don't win this year, 13 years since they've won a World Series,
yeah.
which is getting a little long for Cardinal history. So, I don't know.
Time moves fast. It's
It
crazy.
does. It does. It's
Yeah,
remarkable to think that. Um, but yeah, I think that they get a fifth starter. They probably and they might get a bullpen guy. I would not be shocked if the only deal they made was to get a fifth starter. Um,
yeah.
what about you? How many trades do you think they wind up making?
Oh man, I mean that's so tough to say, just because you kind of wonder that. Yeah, I would think that would be a focus, and I'm also leaning more toward bullpen help
Yeah,
that they would focus on, which is a little bit tough. One or two at the most.
yeah,
That's just kind of. I mean, I feel like that with with pitching being the most important. I don't. The reason I say that about any right-handed bat is it's just I felt like that was kind of out of character for them to come out and say right away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Because or the flip side of that, it could be, well, we know we're always going to be looking for pitching, so this could be the additional.
that's true.
But even with that being said, I would assume that it's going to be 1 and 1A, bullpen and rotation help.
And again, I still look at those pool of assets they have, and I think it's going to be very interesting because it feels like I really feel like that Dylan Carlson's probably on the move.
Yeah,
In part because he's going to have some value, although not what he would have had, and somebody's probably going to get a lot out of him, and we'll talk about it for years. But I also think, we're getting a roster crunch, right?
Yeah.
If Tommy Edman was actually going to be back soon, that's probably, you're probably packing off Brandon Crawford by that point. But after that, you're kind of, there's not an obvious move, right? As much, maybe you could say Matt Carpenter, but they're not going to release Matt Carpenter in the middle of the year.
No.
I don't think, unless he's willing to, head out early. And so, Crawford, they would, just because they don't have the connections to him. But even then, they've left him here for a long time. I just don't think he has much place when Tommy Edman's back.
Sure.
But you're starting to get into that. Okay, well, we're going to trade for player XYZ. Then how are we going to get him on the roster? Now that being said, if you trade for a pitcher, you can shuffle the bullpen or you've got some options out there, and you're pretty much going to keep that 13-13 split. So if you're trading for a pitcher, you're probably not getting rid of an outfielder. But if you're trying to bring in any other kind of bat, I think Carlson's probably part of the package.
Sure. You've got maybe this is just the low hanging fruit, but this may be all they have to move is your Carlson and your Herrera, right?
Yeah.
We talked about that a lot last week, but I can't imagine them moving off of anybody they brought over last year, at the deadline of the guys, and I don't even know how close some of them are.
Yeah, you never know because they could flip somebody like that. You could see them flip a Kloffenstein or a Reverse if they didn't think that it was going to pan out or whatever the case may be. But yeah, I don't know who else they have either. If you're talking lottery tickets, because you take on somebody's salary, that's it could be anybody, right? Anybody at single A or whatever. But yeah, I really, that's one of the reasons I think that they're limited on how many trades they can make, because I just don't know that there's a whole lot that's worth that other teams want, right? Because we've talked the system is not that deep, or doesn't feel like it to me. And the guys like, Tinkins isn't going anywhere. Quinn Matthews isn't going anywhere. But after that, what, are there untouchables? I don't know that there are, right? If somebody, I don't think they'd be wanting to move to Kohlrabi, but if it got them what they needed, I don't know that they have significant attachment to it either. So I don't know. I think that, they'll always surprise us because they value people different than when we think, but it just feels to me like there's just not a whole lot of things to trade. And so I think they'll try to, do the best they can on a deal. And that's probably about all they'll do.
Sure. Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. And that's kind of status quo of how they've been forever.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no particular reason.
Or in recent memory.
Yeah. This, in theory, could be like Mo's last trading deadline. Probably has next year's as well, because his contract doesn't run up till the end of next year. But there's no particular reason to think that Mo would treat a last deadline anything like any other deadline, right? He's not looking to make a legacy or have this big exclamation point on his career or anything like that. He's just going to do the trades that he feel like they need to do and try to keep you set up for success in the future. And so, just the fact that his time is coming to an end in St. Louis, and I don't think that's going to make any impact on how he treats the trade deadline.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's completely out of character for him.
Yeah,
It's I could being status quo, and the I'm not so certain we've seen the end of Mo in St. Louis either.
no, I wouldn't be stunned if he stays in the organization somehow. But I do think the fact that, and he mentioned it when we were at Blogger Day. I saw some more references to it recently that Chaim Bloom, was working on a project, and the project seems to have been how Chaim Bloom would do things differently, and options and changes that the organization could be made. Which, of course, if they like what they hear, it makes Chaim Bloom probably the next guy in line, if
Yeah,
not already. But yeah, I mean, I think that it will be interesting to see. But Mo's getting out of the president of baseball operations. He's going to get out of the day to day. He's going to get out of the limelight, but he may not get out of the organization entirely.
yeah, sure, true. That's kind of how I feel.
Unless he wants to. I mean, he's got to that.
Yeah.
He's getting to that. Spot in life where he may be willing to. Ready to. Get away from baseball. But I think more than likely, if he doesn't have that. That huge. If he can have an 8 to 5 job or something like that, basically for working for the Cardinals instead of being on call constantly, I think he'd probably take that. And I mean, I'm sure there'd be, and I'm whoever takes over that spot would I'm sure tap him quite regularly for advice and opinions and stuff like that. But I think they'd also feel like they were free to do it their way.
True. Yeah, and that's probably not huge oversight from Mo, and that he just doesn't seem to be the type.
Yeah.
But as far as the day to day, he may not miss it.
No, I wouldn't think so after this long. It's probably doesn't miss. It won't miss bloggers and podcasters and media and all that stuff and saying his name all the time either. So
Yeah.
All right. Well, again, it's been a quiet week. Things pick up hopefully today. I haven't looked at Atlanta's weather report. I assume we're good for today. So anything we didn't touch on that you think we should have?
Nothing that comes to mind. It's kind of a dead week, really.
Yeah. So we still filled an hour, so I guess we've done our duty.
Yep.
Like I said, we'll be shifting to Saturdays. So look for us then. Appreciate the rating and reviewing. We got a new review this week, and really appreciate that. It was good to see, and it does help get the name out there, get the show spread around, and we appreciate that. So until next time, for Alan, I'm Daniel. Good night.
Good night.
Hey everyone, Daniel here. Appreciate you listening to the show, and if you are a regular listener, great to have you. If you're a first timer, hope you come back. We would love it if you would rate and review the show on your favorite podcast platform. Either click some stars or give us a write-up. That would be awesome. It helps to get the show spread a little bit farther. And heck, we just like the feedback. I'm going to be honest with you. So if you haven't done that, please do. Give it a shot. You can find us anywhere you find podcasts for the most part. We're also on YouTube. If you're interested in putting this on in the background, there's no video with it yet. Hopefully never will be. I don't think you want that, but who knows? You can find us, search for Meet Me at Musial, or you can look for Daniel Shoptaw. It's under my personal account. But the shows upload there, so if you want to listen to it there, you can. Contact Alan or Daniel or me. That's me, Daniel. You can contact us at any time at C70 at amedlock1. You can follow the Twitter account of the Musial at Meet Me at Musial. And thanks for being a listener. Appreciate it, and talk at you later.
0-1 to Pujols. In the air, left field, and Pujols has given St. Louis the lead. A dramatic, towering 3-run home run. Stunned in disbelief here in Houston.